Good afternoon. We will begin our commencement ceremony by listening to the Star-Spangled Banner as sung by Matthew Julien, a senior who is earning his bachelor's degree in vocal performance.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please be seated. At Missouri State University, we're very proud of our many outstanding programs. One such program is our music department, where many talented and dedicated students study and train. It is our pleasure to have the Missouri State University Jazz Ensemble No. 1, conducted by Dr. Jason Hausbach, with us today. I invite you to enjoy the sounds of the Jazz Ensemble as they entertain us with Sing a Simple Song by Bob Mintzer. Welcome to commencement. Missouri State University observes two commencement periods during the year. The spring commencement is held in mid-May, and the fall commencement occurs at the end of the fall semester in December. This is the second of three programs today. Because of the large number of graduates, we are conferring graduate and bachelor's degrees in the Reynolds College of Arts, Social Sciences, and Humanities and the College of Education at this ceremony. We are conferring the graduate and bachelor degrees to the students in the other colleges at other ceremonies. Over the course of the ceremonies held today, we will award 3,078 degrees. Of that total, 2,222 are undergraduate and 856 are graduate degrees. The Missouri State University faculty and staff are proud to recognize members of this graduating class who have distinguished themselves by their academic achievement and leadership and who have earned academic or performance scholarships. Funding for many of these scholarships is made possible by alumni and friends of the university, and we thank them for their support and generosity. Several governors of the university are on the platform today. Members of the Board of Governors are appointed by the Governor of the State of Missouri and approved by the State Senate. They serve 6-year terms and carry the responsibilities set forth in statute as the policy-making arm of the institution. We also have a student representative to the Board of Governors who serves a 2-year term. We're grateful to the governors for the time they take from their schedules and give to the university, and we are pleased they can be with us today to take part in commencement. I will now introduce the platform party. They will stand as their names are called, and I would ask that you hold your applause until all have been introduced. In the second row, beginning at my right, your left, Neosha Mackey, Emeritus Dean of Library Services, who will be reading names of graduates. Bradley Cooper, a student from Willard and our student member of the Board of Governors. Paige Paxton, a student from Holton, Kansas, and your senior class president. Laura Derrick, Chair of the Staff Senate. Scott Zimmerman, Chair of the Faculty Senate. Dr. Melissa Gorley, a veterinarian from Mountain Grove and member of the board. Travis Freeman, a businessman from Chesterfield and member of the board. Chris Waters, a businessman from Kansas City and member of the board. And Tanya Tinsley, Associate Professor of World Languages and Cultures, who will also be reading names of the graduates. In the front row, beginning at my right, your left, Dr. Anson Elliott, former Dean or Dean Emeritus of the Dar College of Agriculture and member of the board. Jeff Schrag, a businessman from Springfield and member of the board. Ann Campeter, a philanthropist from Centerton and member of the board. Tim Franska, a businessman from Bolivar and member of the board. Lynn Parman, a businesswoman from Parkville and chair of the Board of Governors. Dr. Margie Van Dieven, Commissioner of Education for the state of Missouri, and our commencement speaker for this ceremony. Dr. John Jasinski, University Provost, and Brent Dunn, Vice President for University Advancement. Please help me recognize the platform party. The faculty and administrators have led in the educational process for our graduates. Many of these people are present today and seated to my right and left. I request that they now stand and that you also recognize them with your applause for their many contributions. I will now introduce our commencement speaker. Dr. Margie Van Dieven is Missouri's Commissioner of Education. She is passionate about ensuring that each child has the opportunity to graduate prepared for success. She has more than 30 years of student-centered service in education, including 8 at Missouri's top educational post. As Commissioner, Dr. Van Dieven works collaboratively with a diverse group of stakeholders to improve educational opportunities for Missouri's nearly 900,000 public school students. Dr. Van Dieven earned a bachelor's degree in education from Missouri State University and a master's degree in educational administration and supervision from Loyola University of Maryland. She then received a doctorate of philosophy and educational leadership from St. Louis University. She has been recognized by both Missouri State University and St. Louis University as a distinguished alumna. Please help me welcome Dr. Van Dieven to the podium.
President Smart, members of the Board of Governors, faculty and staff, family and friends, and above all, the extraordinary students we celebrate today, thank you. It is an honor to stand before you as we mark the achievements of the 2024 graduating class of Missouri State University. Now, it's been a couple of months now since I ran into President Smart and his wife, Gail, on a Sunday morning at a Panera just outside of St. Louis. And coincidentally, I had recently announced that I would be stepping down as commissioner and was enjoying my cup of coffee while doing some work on my resume, an exercise of reflecting on specific milestones in life, education attainment certainly being one of them, when President Smart let me know that I was being considered as your commencement speaker. He asked if I was interested, and I obviously jumped at the chance. I immediately reflected back on my graduation years from, yes, Missouri State University, yes, back in the 1900s, eager to share with you the inspiring words that were shared with me 34 years ago when I sat where you sit today. And here's what I have to share with you. I have absolutely no recollection of who the speaker was, much less what he or she had to share with me today. So that pretty much put things in perspective for me relatively quickly. Here's what I do remember. First, lining up for the ceremony with good friends, grappling with the mix of emotions of the day, much like I imagine many of you are experiencing right now. Excitement for the future, nostalgia for the past, and a hint of uncertainty. Here's what I know now. Planning for the future is wise. Fretting about the future is futile. Enjoy this moment. It is a really big moment. Take all of this in. Most of what I thought I wanted at the time of graduation, or that I feared could occur, never happened. Instead, so much of my life has far exceeded my expectations, both the highs and the lows. So for today, celebrate your accomplishments and cherish those who are beside you, either in body or spirit, which takes me to the other memory that I have of this day. My family cheering me on from the stands, as they have done throughout my entire life. To all here supporting these graduates, your presence does not go unnoticed. It matters. Now, my enthusiasm grew even more when I discovered that I'd be speaking to graduates from the Reynolds College of Arts, Social Sciences, Humanities, and the College of Education, because I knew I would be in an arena surrounded by others who share a deep commitment to making a difference in the world. People dedicated to helping others, improving lives, and building stronger, more compassionate communities. What could be more needed than that today? Now, don't get me wrong. I value other professions. Food security, environmental sustainability, economic development, and technological progress are vital to our future. And today in particular, I am feeling a deep appreciation for our healthcare professionals. Exactly 1 year ago, on this very day, I underwent unexpected surgery following a head injury. It is entirely possible that I wouldn't be standing in front of you today were it not for the extraordinary care provided by doctors and nurses and lots of prayers. But let's face it, none of these professions are possible without great teachers, the profession that grows all other professions. I have been so proud of my alma mater's ongoing commitment to teacher training. Missouri State consistently prepares more teachers annually than any other educator preparation provider in Missouri. This does not happen by chance, but rather through intentional efforts such as the Be a Teacher campaign, the Registered Teacher Apprenticeship programs, and by launching a Center for Rural Education. Yet our nation is facing a teacher shortage. What would we do without great teachers? Teachers change lives, and I venture to guess that every one of you can think of a great teacher who has made a difference in your life. And now, while there are unprecedented efforts underway in Missouri to address recruitment and retention, it will take continued collective effort and investment to address this workforce challenge and its complexities. So to our educators today, whether that be today's graduates, the professors who prepared you, or the many educators in the stands, it is often said that teaching is more than a profession. It's a calling that shapes lives and builds futures. Thank you. Thank you for saying yes to the calling, cultivating your skills and your passion, and for embracing the responsibility that comes with guiding young minds. And to those of you who are not teachers, I ask each and every one of you to support them, invest in them, and lift them up. The number one thing we can do within schools to improve student performance is to make sure that each student has a highly skilled, highly trained teacher. Elevating our teachers elevates our future. Now, arts, social sciences, and humanities majors, you're not off the hook. We need you too. When I was first named the commissioner close to a decade ago, the department conducted regional meetings all throughout our state, and we asked attendees what matters most for our students. Now, we ended up with a pretty big list, many characteristic of the region that we were visiting. However, in every corner of the state, parents stated, "I just want my child to be happy." Isn't that what we want for our children? Happiness, fulfillment, and true joy. And while there's lots of joy and laughter in this world, the data on the increased mental health needs and anxiety of our youth cannot be ignored. Many are and for good reason, point to the impact of the pandemic. It certainly played a role, but the unfavorable trends started before the pandemic, causing others to point to societal factors. Take, for example, social media. Is it really a surprise that the data show a high correlation between increased mental health needs in our youth with the launching of various social media platforms? The rise of social media has heightened the effects of social comparison, magnifying feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, and self-doubt. With just a few taps of our phones, we can see others' accomplishments, vacations, celebrations, and seemingly perfect lives, leaving us feeling like we're somehow falling short in comparison. So with that in mind, I want you to consider a famous quote attributed to Theodore Roosevelt. "Comparison is the thief of joy." So on the one hand, we acknowledge our quest for happiness and joy, and on the other, we're providing children, sometimes as young as 10 and 11 years old, unlimited access to social media platforms that are counterintuitive to that pursuit. You all know this better than anyone. You have lived it almost your entire lives. I have not. When I was here, there was a payphone outside my suite in Blair Shannon. No cell phones, not to mention social media. The fast-paced achievements in technology, while promising, come with challenges. Now, don't get me wrong. I am a fan of advancement and guard against the risk of stagnation. But in our rapidly changing world, marked by technological advancements, globalization, and societal shifts, graduates from RCASH, we need you at the table. We need you at the table to foster understanding, to strengthen critical thinking and communication skills, and to promote ethical reflection and civic engagement. In a world that can sometimes feel divided and fractured, you remind us of our shared humanity and our collective responsibility to one another. Never underestimate the impact that you can have. Which brings me to my final point, the need for social connections. When we feel connected to others, we are happier, healthier, and more fulfilled. Recent studies tell us that social connection boosts our immune system, reduces our risk of chronic illness, and even increases our lifespan. Stay connected with those who challenge you to grow and with those who make you laugh. A few weeks ago, I returned to my office following a meeting to find my phone filled with several unread text messages. Fearing the worst, I thought something must be going on, and then I realized they were all confined to my Alpha Sigma Alpha group text thread, and something definitely was going on. The Springfield mayor had just proclaimed April 18th as Springfield Cashew Chicken Day, and many were ready to hit the cashew chicken trail. Now, this quickly digressed into jokes about what we would pack for such a trip. Our awful sweatpants with the Greek letters across our backside that I can't believe we actually wore to class. Hair product, lots of hair product. How else would we have achieved that classic 80s hair? And you get the idea. But my point is this: stay connected. And yes, technology can help with this. There are women on that text thread from California to Connecticut and lots of places in between. One of them is here with me today, along with a few other good friends I've made along the way. And I can assure you, we have had lots of laughter amid a few tears over the past 35 years. Today doesn't need to be a day of goodbyes, rather a step to your next chapter. And if you're lucky, you will share many chapters of your life with the relationships you have built right here. Stay connected. As graduates of Missouri State University, you are part of a proud tradition of excellence, innovation, and service to others. Carry that legacy with you wherever you go, and know that you have the power to change the world in ways both big and small. It's up to you now. Congratulations.
The Army Reserve Officers Training Corps has been a cooperative partner in the university's educational program since 1952. Tomorrow, 8 students will be commissioned as second lieutenants into the United States Army at a ceremony held in Plaster Student Union. We wish them all well in their future careers. The veterans and military members living, working, and receiving their education at the university are a valued and vital component of our campus community. We recognize and honor their sacrifices and the sacrifices of their families, and value their life experiences as they broaden the diversity of our faculty, staff, and student body. As such, students graduating from the university who serve, have served, or will be serving after graduation in the United States Armed Forces have been invited to wear a red, white, and blue honor cord at today's ceremony in recognition of their service to our country. I now invite these individuals to stand and be recognized. Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, graduates for all degrees will be presented by Dr. John Jasinski, University Provost. It is understood, of course, that no candidate graduates officially until all grades are recorded and a final examination of the student's record is made. The lawyers make me read that. John.
Will the candidates for the Specialist in Education degree please rise? President Smart, these candidates completed the requirements for the Specialist in Education degree. It is with great pride that they are presented to you on behalf of the graduate faculty for the conferring of the degree.
By the authority of the state of Missouri vested in the Board of Governors and delegated to me, I now confer upon you the degree of Specialist in Education and declare that you have surmounted the second level of graduate studies and are qualified to supervise the learning process.
Will the candidates for the Specialist in Education degree please proceed forward?
Dr. Julie Masterson, Dean of the Graduate College, will hood the candidates. Dr. Tanya Tinsley will present the students.
Lauren Grace Rector. Melanie Elizabeth Freeby. Casey Parsons. Christy Leanna Eidson. Gretchen Michelle Davis. Stephanie Frigerio. Madison Riley Rybolt. Alyssa Rochelle Gibson. Jeffrey Allen Pettibone. Clayton Allen Taff. Tammy J. Black. Jennifer Elaine Leffler. Amanda Marie Mowdy. Sorry.
You may be seated. Thank you. Will the candidates for all master's degrees please rise? President Smart, these candidates completed all of the requirements for their respective master's degree. The graduate faculty of Missouri State University are pleased to present them to you for the conferring of the degree.
By the authority of the state of Missouri vested in the Board of Governors and delegated to me, I now confer upon you the master's degree. I testify that you have surmounted the first level of graduate studies, and I wish you every success as you serve humanity through your accomplishments.
Will all candidates except those in the first row please be seated? And will the candidates for master's degrees in the first row please proceed forward, followed by master's candidates in other rows as directed by our marshals.
Dr. Julie Masterson, Associate Provost and Dean of the Graduate College, and Dr. Carissa Holscher, Associate Dean of the Graduate College, will hood the candidates. Dr. Tanya Tinsley and Ms. Neosha Mackey will present the students.
Eric Jacob Eastman.
Sherry Montgomery.
Audrey Jean Masters. Bailey Deanne Weaver. Madison Taylor Littrell.
Lalena Vaughn.
Hunter Dylan Gullion.
Jesse Paul Mook.
Joseph Cook Emerson. Taylor Ann Jones,
Taylor Mackenzie Moore,
Austina Ellen Mae Lane,
Reagan Alexis Lux,
Maria Duncan,
Amber Lee Fisher,
Emily D. Parker,
Sterling B. Olson,
Kelsey Ryan Muse,
Mary Elizabeth Cressy,
Jessica M. Morton,
Shelby A. Tice,
Jacqueline M. Stork,
Aaron Cedra,
Melissa Grace Carter,
Anton Pleshka,
Anna Christine Snedden,
Randy LaShawn Jackson,
Amanda Sue Oldham,
Brenna Eaton,
Victoria Oluwabukola Farayola,
Alyssa K. Seidel,
Fardad Ali Khan Musa,
Sarah Jane Albright,
Claudia Edwards,
Mary Versu,
Brenda Stacy Dawn York,
Sadie Ida Gill,
Angela Rose Rechtfertig,
Patricia N. Jones,
Betsy Lynn Small,
Syed Asif Riaz,
Kimberly Dawn Gillespie,
Suzanne Lee Mayfield,
Brendan Bruce Shanko,
Brianna L. Shawless,
Rebecca Rose McGuire,
Brandon James Gaffney,
Erin Lynn Albers,
Heather M. Killian,
Dylan James Nance,
C.J. Kinney,
Kristen Michelle Kessinger,
Brittany Marilyn Kaiser,
Emily Nicole Clark,
Amanda J. Modell,
Haley M. Cooper,
Makisha Sophia Hayes,
Bethany K. Powles,
Hannah Elizabeth Carter,
Janari Lachey Harris,
Amanda Luann Lucas,
Sydney Aaron Reiling,
Jennifer Asamoah,
Mackenzie A. Brink,
Stephanie Ann Reynolds,
Elijah Slover,
Nuranisa Samreen,
Emma Jane Sullivan,
Samantha J. Gardner,
Claire M. Smith,
Jessica Diane Dunn,
Tasnuva Tabassum,
Jordan Danielle Endicott,
Mariah Jessie Hunter,
Amber D. Klein,
Paige Nicole Neiswiner,
Cheyenne J. Weiss,
McKenna Lynn Cornelson,
Megan N. Harper,
Kristen Elizabeth Kurtz, Megan Elizabeth Keller,
Rachel Elizabeth Williams,
Emma Hope Moore,
Allison June Davis,
Mariah Joanna Shepard,
Kaylee S. Evans,
Ryan Matthew Ziegler,
Allison C. Taylor,
Alexander Miller Ryan,
Cassandra G. Ruiz,
Ashley Mon Ning Raleigh,
Jacob L. Cannon,
Michaela L. McChesney,
Shaquille L. Benbow,
Tanner Layton Munson,
Matthew Neff,
Jan Velyak,
Brad Spencer,
Emma Chirovich,
Alyssa Karen Malloy,
Gabrielle Renee Purley,
Haley Nicole Brown,
Timothy Pallett,
Uday Sanada,
April Renee Scahan,
Samara Mizutani Cesar,
Ronnie Marie Asavadilochai Bradley,
Haley L. Leon Sinis,
Jaslyn Serena Barnes,
Emily Rose Hicks,
Hurab Romeo,
Joshua David Wolfington,
Megan Diane Craven,
Natalie Jean Dreeman,
Mackenzie Melissa Maxwell,
Kelsey Marie Louise Donovan,
Billy Lindsay,
Kelly T. Evans,
Kit Kaylee Ann Folk,
Holly Ann French,
Emma Grace Mancini,
Zion Lynn Rife Stevens,
Brittany Marie Huish,
Julian Enrique Pacheco,
Chink Chong,
Cameron Nicole Downing Smith,
Rita Mudhungo,
Ricardo Andres Suarez,
Colton Wade Neal,
Ryan James Raymaker,
Megan Louise Reeves,
Marilyn Sue Collier Brannon,
Aimee L. Fraze,
Emily Marie Starkey,
Chelsea Jean McDaniel,
Mary Raquel Ann Pinnaker,
Carrie R. Kemp,
Amanda M. Watkins.
Brittany L. Miller.
Lucy Michelle Atwood.
Shauna Marie Willis.
Sydney Marie Miles.
Emma Claire Hantelman.
Emma Lee Nelson.
Andrea Lynn Atkins.
Hannah Corin Chapman.
Megan Lizette Perry.
Hunter Noel Loff.
Heather Michelle Franklin.
Brody Joseph Turnbaugh.
Shayna Joellen Dunn.
Cynthia Chineri Ogu.
Bridget Lynn Smith.
Lydia Mackenzie Martinez.
Mallory Lyle.
T. Love William.
JC L. Suda.
Echo Mensakakra.
Victoria M. Wells.
Chandler J. Maples. Sarah M. Roy. Dallas Remington Hall. Hannah Lynn Gower. Wang Jiawin. Mo Win Lee. Melissa Faye Hinkey. Jacqueline Nicole Jansen. Michaela Dawn Hosp. Joelle Mans. Adam Michael Barker. Leanna Elizabeth Pavone. Kayla Elizabeth Kernsval. Abigail C. Reesmeyer. Kaylee A. Cumley. Summer Dawn Hedrick. Morgan Nicole Browning. Jennifer J. Albright. H. M. Martuza.
Before we confer the Missouri State University bachelor degrees, I would like to note the scholastic accomplishments of several of our students. Would the students wearing the blue stoles please rise? And please join me in recognizing these graduates of the university's Honors College. You may be seated. Several students are graduating with scholastic honors and are identified by the cordons they are wearing. Students graduating summa cum laude have achieved a grade point average of at least 3.90. Will those students graduating summa cum laude and wearing the gold cordon please rise and remain standing? Students graduating magna cum laude have achieved a grade point average between 3.75 and 3.89. Would those students graduating magna cum laude and wearing the silver cordon please rise and remain standing? Finally, students graduating cum laude have achieved a grade point average between 3.50 and 3.74. Would those students graduating cum laude and wearing a bronze cordon please rise and remain standing? On behalf of the university, congratulations to all of you on your impressive scholastic achievements. And now, will all the candidates for Missouri State University bachelor degrees please rise? President Smart, these candidates completed all of the requirements for their respective bachelor degrees. The faculty of Missouri State University take great pleasure in presenting them to you for the conferring of the degree.
By the authority of the state of Missouri vested in the Board of Governors and delegated to me, I now confer upon you the bachelor's degree and wish you the best in your careers.
Will all candidates except those in the first row please be seated? And will the candidates for bachelor degrees in the first row please proceed forward, followed by bachelor candidates in other rows as directed by our marshals.
Dr. Tanya Tinsley and Ms. Neosha Mackey will again present the students.
Lauren N. Holsabus, magna cum laude.
Alexandra Rianne Miller, cum laude.
Charles Joseph Foy, cum laude.
Hannah Renee Burns, cum laude.
Blake A. Bender.
Jonathan William Shanks.
Ryan T. Bowermaster, cum laude.
Ian Philip Tucker, cum laude.
Matthew Stephen Julien,
Anna
summa cum
Renee
laude.
Butler.
Jace Alexander Malshawn Rather.
Savannah Renee Hayton, cum laude.
Chloe Rose Lathram, magna cum laude in the Honors College.
Jake A. Bollinger.
Timothy Gregory Coton Wellman, summa cum laude.
Brady J. Wilhite.
Lauren Elizabeth Wiley.
Sonoka Kawakami, cum laude.
Obriana Joy Duval.
Warachara Upapong.
Michaela Ashley Busick, cum laude.
Riley M. Maple.
Keegan Timothy Adkins.
Madeline C. Veltrop.
Lillian Mavis Sheely, summa cum laude.
Alan M. Butterfield, magna cum laude.
Emma Josephine Thuet.
Garrett Kelly Now.
Brianna Lynn Rogers, magna cum laude.
Jacob McElwain.
Zachary David Arnold.
Evan Day McCall.
Justin J. Albright, summa cum laude.
Kealuha Haukamahala Hakuole, magna cum laude.
Cicely Louisa Wilson.
Drew Michael Hinkhouse.
Kinley G. Fosnaw, cum laude.
Georgiana Bree Cannon, magna cum laude.
Petra Leanne Scott.
James L. Oettinger, magna cum laude.
Harris Matthew Wilkin.
Jackson P. Huey, cum laude.
Caitlin Marie Homer.
James Henry Ogutu.
Elizabeth Marie Rains, magna cum laude.
Tyler Jordan Aldridge.
Madeline Grace Wertzima.
Zoe Tessa Brewer.
Nicholas James Larson, cum laude.
Josh Zumwinkle.
Joshua Dakota Zapita, magna cum laude.
Julian R. Garrett.
Kirsten Michelle York, cum laude.
Matthew R. Grazza, summa cum laude.
Abby Christine Backley.
Samuel Ethan Day.
Brianna Schrader, cum laude.
Emily Ann Day, summa cum laude.
Lakin Elizabeth Douglas.
Ina Hamble, cum laude.
Grace Diane Cunningham.
Alyssa Hope Farrar, magna cum laude.
Claire Elizabeth Inman, cum laude.
Katie Cameron Smith.
Kirsten Renee Rhodes, cum laude.
Michaela A. Malachowski, summa cum laude.
Madeline Carol Bickle.
Abigail Elise Warren, cum laude.
Madeira Lynn Miller.
Morgan Christine Burkhart, magna cum laude.
Erin Kelly Wells, cum laude.
Kyle T. Roberts, cum laude.
Carly Ray Randalls, cum laude.
Skylar Rianne Blakely, summa cum laude.
Michaela Christine Strickland, summa cum laude.
Allison Nicole Schoenbeck, summa cum laude.
Megan McKinney, magna cum laude.
Clara Ann Lindsay.
Courtney Ann Scornia.
Melissa Jane Bowles, summa cum laude.
Jonathan Ross McMurdo.
Adriana Fuel, cum laude.
Dylan Seth Cothran, cum laude.
Cade Williams Flushel.
Hannah Celeste Volts, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Elizabeth S. Witherow, magna cum laude.
Zoe Alex Trineri.
Haley Nicole Flauher, cum laude.
Ian Patrick Townsend.
Jordan S. Donnelly.
Katie Marie Wimhainer, magna cum laude.
Mary Rose Houston, magna cum laude.
Lauren Avery Rose, magna cum laude.
Ruth Pachia Mua.
Andrea Graciela Colazos, cum laude.
Susan Gayola Cha, cum laude.
Samantha Nicole Stoltz, summa cum laude.
Tiffany Moshe West, cum laude.
Maria Giovanna Biondo, magna cum laude.
Jordan Carlene Mays.
Melissa Ann Hendrickson, summa cum laude.
Morgan Alexandria Stewart.
Laura Taylor Spinabella, cum laude.
Dalton Michael Parks, cum laude.
Caitlin Morgan Thornton, cum laude.
Dylan J. Green.
Imogen M. Parton.
Tate Ryan Mankin.
Dorcha Fa, magna cum laude.
Fox Alexander Elrod.
Braylon J. Cowan, magna cum laude in the Honors College.
Andriana Grace Ciara Mitaro, cum laude.
Jordan Abigail Hill, magna cum laude.
Addison Lee Jones.
Grace Ann Matthews, magna cum laude.
Macy Joanne Helms, cum laude.
Kayla Marie Perdome, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Sarah Serena Abbott, magna cum laude.
Kylie Michelle Perdome, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Brianna Elizabeth Conyers, summa cum laude.
Abby Caroline Smith.
Caleb Joseph Cloud, magna cum laude.
Hunter Douglas Wood.
Diana Rhodes, cum laude.
Emma Agnes Talkin, cum laude.
Garrett Christian Nickteen, magna cum laude.
Damian John Leffler.
Jaden G. Melnick, magna cum laude.
Steeler Thane Lawrence.
Emily McKenna, magna cum laude.
Faith M. Edwards, magna cum laude.
Jenna Lee Murray, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Brady Johnson, summa cum laude.
Lillian Rose Durr, summa cum laude.
Alexis Christine Hazelrig.
Casey Michael Loving, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Emily Rose Smith, cum laude.
Marianne Grace Prox, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Melissa Hurtado.
Emma C. Gullifson, summa cum laude.
Ewan Tyson, cum laude.
Claire McKenzie Bailey.
John Lee, summa cum laude.
Noah Daniel McWhirter.
Sarah Helene Miller, summa
Amber,
cum laude.
Amber McGuire, summa cum laude.
Natalie Ann Pollitt.
Evelyn Martinez Juarez.
Tyler Scott Peters, cum laude.
Stephanie Maturino Gonzalez, summa cum laude.
Kiara Lane Dowdy, magna cum laude.
Silas Timothy Garrison.
Keely Francis Flanagan, magna cum laude in the Honors College.
Peyton Anthony Welton.
Rylan William Calvin Hillier.
Candace Diet Algie.
Elliot Noach Barber.
Taylor Elaine Fries.
Leah Claire Huska.
Taylor Nicole Milton, summa cum laude.
Nayeli Hernandez France, magna cum laude.
Thomas J. Shartner, summa cum laude.
Reese Aaron Hardig, cum laude.
Laurel Elizabeth Shartner, cum laude.
Gavin Wilhelm, summa cum laude.
Bailey Grace Shaw.
Sarah Kwong Hinkson.
Alayla Brianna Cage.
William H. Mahler IV.
Skylar Kiana Small, cum laude.
Dustin Godar.
Umatani Sabanyunzi.
Blaine Jessup Swinford.
Carteza Destiny Shelton, cum laude.
Abby Grace Burton, cum laude.
Sierra Nicole Sankey, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Victoria I. Campos, cum laude.
Jonathan R. Blewett.
Peyton Renee Burke, magna cum laude.
Caden Wayne O'Bannon.
Liliana Darlene Hayes, magna cum laude in the Honors College.
Aaron Michael Neiman.
Sarah Dawn Garner, magna cum laude.
Jacob Rosecrans.
Grace Ann Omiller, magna cum laude.
Parker William Johnson.
Nathan Allen Caskey, cum laude.
Drake Walter Homer.
Jacob Alexander Kimry.
Caitlin Elizabeth Pluff, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Allison Nicole Sexton, cum laude.
Traven Wayne Clemens.
Elena Josephine Jaquez, magna cum laude.
Cody Charles Daniel Kimes.
Denise Wilhelmina Chambers.
Bailey J. Williams.
Sydney London Smith.
Matthew T. Price.
Michaela Rain Kaler, summa cum laude.
Clayton M. Daw.
Hannah Lorene Kaysen, cum laude.
Samuel George Constantine Frederick.
Avery Jameson Zook, cum laude.
Kaylee Elizabeth Goshi, cum laude.
Rachel Melinda Hieronymus.
Joseph Rowan Snelling.
Jillian Marie Reisinger, cum laude.
Eli Wilcox.
Savannah Jordan James.
Tiffany Marie McAllister.
Bryson Shea Park.
Samantha Rose Graves.
Brendan Patrick Clark.
Emma Bloodworth, cum laude.
Darren John Holloway, magna cum laude.
Emma Jean Wyrick, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Quentin Parker Link.
Andrea Lynn Stowe.
Keziah Troy Wansley.
Zoe Ann Grace DiCapria, magna cum laude.
Trevor Allen Huck.
Jaden Michael Cornell.
Luke Dryden Stallings.
Skylar Dawn Ivy, magna cum laude.
Jacob P. Linhart.
Trinity Marie Riker.
Aaron K. Gantz, summa cum laude.
Carlisle Lynn Palmer.
Joshua Brushwood, summa cum laude.
Vanessa Aracely Frere.
Josephine Marie Hale.
Robert J. Custer.
Chelsea Louise Dieters.
Jackson Lawrence McCloskey.
Courtney Grace Adamson, cum laude.
Madeline Pohl.
Alexis Nicole Smith, magna cum laude.
Erin Elizabeth Waymeyer.
Julia May Lovett, magna cum laude.
Nicole Page Hall, magna cum laude.
Lydia Joan Caswell, summa cum laude.
Samuel John Michael.
Chuhan Wang, summa cum laude.
Caroline Lee Parker.
Jacob Nevels, summa cum laude.
Chloe Nicole Harris, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Avery Allen Mann.
Marquess Lavelle Shepard.
Vincent Stephen Phillips, magna cum laude.
Macy Ellen Quigg.
Crystal Jade Neesmer, magna cum laude.
Patrick Hamilton Brambo.
Alexandra Ramirez.
Brosnan Smith Andrus, summa cum laude.
Caitlin Virginia Berg, cum laude.
Madison S. Johnson, cum laude.
Madison Rachel Jones, magna cum laude.
Grace Harrison Stalker, cum laude.
Robin Faith Thomas.
Henry Richard Trigg, cum laude.
Emily May Rudder.
Caleb Matthew Miofsky.
Michelle E. Lewis, summa cum laude.
Skylar Catherine Desick, cum laude.
Georgia A. Versluis, magna cum laude.
Jillian Avery Lazuri, summa cum laude.
Ashley Gail Jones, summa cum laude.
Elizabeth Denise Bunker, cum laude.
Riley Anna Snow, cum laude.
Sadie Lynn Dickerson.
Spencer Dunham Cox.
Travis Michael Barton, cum laude.
Megan K. Hare.
Liam Alexander Quinton Smith.
Ashton Tyler DeHaven, summa cum laude.
Camille Alexa Jett, summa cum laude.
Lawton W. Linsenbart.
Grace Elizabeth Duncan.
Jonathan D. Brandstetter.
Elijah Lee Nash.
Lauren Charlie Willis.
Henry Thomas Lang, magna cum laude.
Melena Gail Bryan.
Adora Lorraine Sneed, cum laude.
Sidney P. Harkins.
Robert Jackson Dickin, Jr.
Erin Grace Hainline, cum laude.
Celeste Alexandria Swick.
Rebecca Lynn Dahl.
Caitlin Elizabeth Cobbs.
Quang Thuy Dong.
Jackson L. Reed.
Elizabeth May Tapin in the Honors College.
Eliana Sophia Cambray, summa cum laude.
Alyssa Rose Roth, cum laude.
Giovanni Gaetano Valforte, summa cum laude.
Allison Brooke Leverett.
Cameron Lynn Parnicky, magna cum laude.
Sydney Caroline Boyce.
Claire Suzanne Marshall, magna cum laude.
Lindsay A. Williams.
Mara B. Colberg, summa cum laude.
Stevie K. Berry, magna cum laude in the Honors College.
Chrissa Hosto, cum laude.
Colton Jeffrey Connors.
Natasha Nicole Pierre Blanco.
Marshall Andrew Noah Noble, cum laude.
Cooper Clayton Bald.
Madison Michelle Haynes, cum laude.
Ashley N. Brake, cum laude.
Reagan Cassidy Neese.
Joad Walid Abbasi.
Madison Grace Young, cum laude.
Muhammad Fali Wada.
Antoinette Therese Oliphant, cum laude.
Donovan Thomas Clark.
Kaylin Nicole Wilson, cum laude.
Jamal Stephen McMurrin.
Allison Elizabeth Cavato, magna cum laude.
Casey M. Gunter.
Nathan Dennis Gregoire.
Marissa Renee Ainsworth, cum laude.
Hannah Hoffman.
Shannon Carolyn Strong, magna cum laude.
Catherine Nicole Guerra.
Catherine Helen Teresa Fields.
Paige Elizabeth Prinster, cum laude.
Caroline A. Sales.
Julia Nicole McLean, summa cum laude.
Allison Brianne Wood, cum laude.
Ashley Jane Maloney.
Emily Jean Ingram.
Holland Elizabeth Easterla.
Lydia Virginia Brandon, cum laude.
Tucker Brian Musgrove, cum laude.
Addison Taylor McCarty, cum laude.
Eric Thomas Papuga.
Gabrielle Malia Bush, summa cum laude.
Claire Elizabeth Tilden.
Grace Olivia Landreth.
Nyan F. Wheeler, summa cum laude.
Roger Nathaniel Erzman.
Caitlin Elaine Cruz, in the Honors College.
Riley A. Louder.
Meg Peterson.
Sydney Marie Campbell, cum laude.
Christopher Thomas Elkins.
Thaddeus Ray Bailey, cum laude.
Ethan Dale Holman, cum laude.
Jack Stephen Rothrock, magna cum laude.
Dayton Dean Chambers.
Scott Andrew Harrison.
Sarah Wheat, summa cum laude.
Josiah Morton Bartges, cum laude.
Rebecca A. Duggan, cum laude.
Bradley Stephen Kerr, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Anna Garduno, summa cum laude.
Abigail May Zajac, summa cum laude.
Destiny Shea Drake.
Garrett Dalton Sims, cum laude.
Carolina Sofia Bermudez, cum laude.
Alexandra M. Wallace.
Kate E. Austin, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Isabella Margaret Edwards, cum laude.
Caitlin Juliana Roberts, summa cum laude.
Catherine Elizabeth McManus, cum laude.
Casey Leanne Carr.
Emily Ann Poole, summa cum laude in the Honors College.
Deja Camille Bonsu.
Seth R. Hammett.
Tyler Dalton Kenyon, magna cum laude.
Spencer Gregory Vreeland, cum laude.
Jacob Connor Bilbrey.
Catherine Marie Cooper.
Trent J. Pendleton.
Zoe G. Wilson.
Richard Delanore Lawson.
Emily Marie Harvey, cum laude.
Danielle Patana Ragsdale, cum laude.
Hannah Page Rivera, magna cum laude.
Ida Taylor Ann Standley, cum laude.
Scott Allen Levin, magna cum laude.
Abigail Page Dodson.
Christopher Edowigas Kemp.
Emma Kate Larimore.
Edrance Emmanuel Jr.
Caroline Aaronsburg.
Alexander Gerard Sharkey, summa cum laude.
Ashley Nicole Finke, cum laude.
Sydney Elizabeth Hatfield.
Zoe Alexandra Rico Bobian.
Blake Samuel Hossman, summa cum laude.
Reese Wild Jazimboski.
Nathan Wade Price, cum laude.
Belen Guadalupe Lomeli.
Bailey Thomas Freeman.
Julia F. Fallert.
Mary Ellen Garrett, cum laude in the Honors College.
Molly Crawford.
Olivia J. Stone.
Brian Jamar Mina Paat, summa cum laude.
Abigail Jewel McClure.
Rebecca Kathleen James, summa cum laude.
Natalie Kate Ross.
Maggie Mancado.
Keely Ryan Minor, cum laude.
Jessica J. Baird, summa cum laude.
Lydia Leanne Withers, cum laude.
Emmett Peachy Reefer.
Ariana Ray Evers.
Sean Michael Kajifer, cum laude.
Madison Leanne Crow, cum laude.
Parker Lynn Bensel, cum laude.
Emily R. Warner.
Caitlin Singleton.
Bethany Joy Harris.
Jimmy Alexandria Donnelly, cum laude.
Madison M. Wendling, cum laude.
Austin Martin Wilson.
Valerie Page Moore, cum laude. Lindblom.
Carson Josiah Funk.
Erica Dawn Lindblom, cum laude.
Leah Grace Funk, summa cum laude.
Emily Darlene Spencer, cum laude.
Laura Dawn Taylor.
Taylor Rose Wurgis, magna cum laude.
Addison J. Denton.
Lydia Grace Otten, summa cum laude.
Danelle Lee Pantlio, cum laude.
Anna Elizabeth Barrett.
Sarah Elizabeth Dills.
Dylan Reese Fitzpatrick, cum laude.
Krista Leanne Husted.
Reagan Leanne Washburn, cum laude.
Mackenzie Joy Falah.
Caitlin Corinne Cheney.
Sarah J. Dingerson, magna cum laude.
Jamie Louise Dean, summa cum laude.
Jessica A. Ingholm, cum laude.
Kinley Elizabeth Coulter, summa cum laude.
Dessa Ruth Outman, summa cum laude.
Christopher Lee Lilly.
Jill Catherine Stolte, summa cum laude.
Bailey Janae Henson.
Elizabeth Rose Redder, cum laude.
Kylie Rodriguez.
Taylor Marie Dudley.
Allison Nicole Minor.
Alyssa Faith Stanek, cum laude.
Rachel Ann McWhirter, summa cum laude.
Delaney Nicole McFeeters, magna cum laude.
Hannah Marie Thornton, cum laude.
Claire Murray Kathleen Mason, cum laude.
Bethany Ann Harrison, cum laude.
Kristen Nicole Storms, cum laude.
Katerina Nicole Bell.
Cassidy Lynn Bolin, cum laude.
Evelyn Ruth Lang, magna cum laude.
Megan Elizabeth Jers, cum laude.
Elizabeth Laura Scoff, summa cum laude.
Olivia Corinne, summa cum laude.
Emily A. Moore.
Olivia Ann Bazanga, summa cum laude.
Jaden Marie Weber.
Misty Lynn Renfro.
Audra Lee Ann McKinney, cum laude.
Reagan Ashley Snyder, magna cum laude.
Amanda N. Allen.
Shayna Nicole Watson, magna cum laude.
Amy Nicole Counts.
Hope L. Dagonia, cum laude.
Hannah Michelle Tuttle.
Michelle Maiden Fleeman, magna cum laude.
Justin Christopher Knapp.
Marissa Lee Hernandez, cum laude.
Julia Lynn Klump, cum laude.
Abigail N. Monday.
Sophia Catherine Olzaka, summa cum laude.
Hannah Nicole Howlett.
Haley Addison Volkman, cum laude.
Megan Kareen Sohn, summa cum laude.
Sydney Michelle Snelson, cum laude.
Kaylin M. Farrell.
Sydney Ann Bergner.
Reese Isabel Maddox, summa cum laude.
Carissa Marie Harmon, magna cum laude.
Ryan Danielle Santoni, summa cum laude.
Jose Eduardo Rodriguez, magna cum laude.
Lily Grace Gray Baker, summa cum laude.
Jake Austin Gabbert.
Haley Elizabeth Flood, magna cum laude.
Zane Hadley Smith.
Abigail Elizabeth Hunt, summa cum laude.
Devin Lee Fries, magna cum laude.
Catherine Eleni Mittman, cum laude.
Olivia Renee Cap, summa cum laude.
Mackenzie C. Brower.
Jessica G. Heslin, magna cum laude.
Caitlin Jeanette Satterfield, cum laude.
Kobe N. Ferris.
Caitlin Paige Bird, cum laude.
Allison Nicole Hall.
Grace Madeline Steck, summa cum laude.
Mary Margaret Wilkinson, magna cum laude.
Jerry Michelle Randolph.
Megan Elizabeth Croxford, magna cum laude.
Lacey Michelle Beatty, cum laude.
Lily Aslin Mannion, magna cum laude.
McKenna L. Baker, cum laude.
Christina Marie Mitchell, cum laude.
Lauren R. Curtis, cum laude.
Avery Lingenfelser Davis.
Madison Page Edwards, summa cum laude.
Abby Elaine Adkins, summa cum laude.
Kaylee Shea Johnson, summa cum laude.
Alyssa C. Mayo, magna cum laude.
Jamie Lee Smith, cum laude.
Tyler Lynn Crane, magna cum laude.
Annabelle Arana, magna cum laude.
Michaela Renee Bledsoe, magna cum laude.
Heidi Duarte, summa cum laude.
Abigail Grace Gedville, summa cum laude.
Leah Marie Weaver, cum laude.
Mason Lee Atwood, summa cum laude.
Jordan Christian Edward Bradham, magna cum laude.
Caitlin Elizabeth King, summa cum laude.
Jillian Marie Ehlers.
Hannah Rose Yates.
Eleanor C. Scott, magna cum laude.
Catherine Marie Cobbin, cum laude.
Anna Rose Wilkeson, cum laude.
Anna Elizabeth Davis, summa cum laude.
Ashlyn Mackenzie Vauble, summa cum laude.
Ashley Morgan Selman, summa cum laude.
Haley Page Houston, cum laude.
Cass Kavanaugh, cum laude.
Clarissa Rose Henderson.
Alexis R. Simpson, magna cum laude.
Alexis Ray Greenman, cum laude.
Anusha Sonal Chakraborty, cum laude.
Peggy Jean Bennett.
Claire Noel Stevener, cum laude.
Lisa Lynn Rhodes, cum laude.
Taylor Marie Dishman, summa cum laude.
Skylar Marie Bauer.
Audrey Nicole Fitzgerald, cum laude.
Taylor K. Miller, summa cum laude.
Madison K. Hayes, magna cum laude.
Lindsay Jordan Thomas.
Megan Christine Hoare, magna cum laude.
Jenna Ann Holdorf.
Sydney Page Carruthers.
Skylar Elise Maynor, magna cum laude.
Jada Connors.
Rebecca Nicole Bunyard, magna cum laude.
Ashley Nicole Stillwell.
Lillian Audrey Bullington, magna cum laude.
Elijah Jeremy Donald Schultz, cum laude.
Brooke Aaron Buffington, cum laude.
Dorian Marie Beckner.
Avery Jalen McNeil.
Madison Page Gundlach, summa cum laude.
Amber Shea Smith, cum laude.
Samantha Hala Jacqueline Melendez.
Brittany Donnay Evans.
Logan Emily Akins.
Melissa G. Johns.
Phoebe Lynn Rodenbeck, cum laude.
Kelsey Michelle Jordan.
Kenzie Marie Walker, magna cum laude.
Isabel R. Smith.
Carly Lynn Campbell.
Sahara Dawn Adams.
Madison Bailey Gross, cum laude.
Christy Leona Pace, magna cum laude.
Lauren J. Lovitz.
Clara Alice Kepler, cum laude.
Avery Elizabeth Benson, summa cum laude.
Kayla Jolynn Bach, cum laude.
Savannah Shea Lumley, magna cum laude.
Riley Elizabeth Meyer, summa cum laude.
Paige Caroline Paxton, cum laude.
Angela Britannia Rodriguez, cum laude. Morgan P. Johns. Paige Elizabeth Winery, cum laude. Steffi Avila, summa cum laude. Swearingen, summa cum laude. Celeste Michelle Wilmot, cum laude. Carmen Lee Tharp, cum laude. Sarah Ann Burton, summa cum laude. Mackenzie Leah Rinkowski. Ashlyn Isella Nicole Pulliam. Taylor Caroline Darrow, cum laude. Abigail Alexandria Thompson. Kendra Leanne Mellington. Andrea K. Humphrey.
As graduates, the university hopes you will continue your affiliation with Missouri State as proud and active alumni. To welcome you to the Alumni Association, I would like to invite to the podium Vice President for University Advancement, Brent Dunn.
Well, congratulations and welcome to the Missouri State University Alumni Association. Now, we have over 150,000 alums that live in all 50 states and over 93 countries around the world. So please keep us up to date on where you are and what you're doing, because chances are pretty good wherever you land, there's going to be alumni there that can help you both professionally and personally. After all, your relationship with Missouri State is now a lifelong experience. For almost 120 years, Missouri State has been educating people that are making a difference in the world, and now it's your turn. As you leave, graduates, we do have a small gift for you, a Bearhead lapel pin. Yes? We thought about a car for everybody, but we settled for the lapel pin. We just ask that you wear it every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the rest of your entire life. If not, just keep Missouri State close to your heart. Education changes people, and people change the world. And now it is your turn. But remember this, you're a student at Missouri State for just a short time in your life. You're an alum of Missouri State for the rest of your entire life. Now, congratulations. Now go get them and go Bears!
The Alma Mater is a distinctive song indicating your lifelong connection to our university. To conclude our ceremony, please stand for the Alma Mater, which will be performed by Matthew Julien.
Sing we praises now to our alma mater. All hail maroon and white, Missouri State we pledge devotion. May you live ever in truth and right. May you live ever in truth and right.
The
It's now time for the recessional, which is an important part of the ceremony. So I'm going to give some instructions. For our guests, we'd ask that you please sit down. Graduates, you will be escorted from your seats and out of the arena by the marshals, row at a time. And then we encourage our graduates and families to reconnect outside the main entrance to Great Southern Bank Arena. Congratulations, have a great evening, and go Bears.
for the next one.